first landed at a ranch at Corona, New Mexico. The rancher turned it over to the Air Force. Rancher W.W. Brazell was the man who discovered the saucer.
What I thought was a star began coming in my direction at a very rapid rate of speed.
The unidentified object, which some sources thought might be a blimp, moved slowly down the Pacific coast from Santa Monica and disappeared south of Long Beach.
I saw a UFO, and it went down the river, turned right at the United Nations, turned left, and then down the river.
UFO classified. UFO classified. No more plausible deniability. Fact, fiction, or the truth. You decide. And now, the new voice of the high desert, the hostess of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes.
Oh, a happy Fantopia Friday, my friends from all over the world. I'm Erica Lukes, happy to spend Friday evening with you. And I have a little secret to tell you. I am actually doing a little stint at the Utah UFO Fest right now. So as much as I want to be in the chat room communicating with Mario and Susan and Jeff and all of the people that are in there that take the time out of their day to get in there and communicate with me, I'm sorry I won't be in chat, but you guys converse and have a great time. I will be doing a roundtable discussion about disclosure at the Utah UFO Festival with my friends Ryan Burns, who's been on the show before, and Dave Rosenfeld as well. It will be great to see Cliff Mahooty and Ron Regehr, who was on the show last week. That was a great show. If you missed it, go to the archives on KCOR and check it out. And I'll also be hanging out with Chris O'Brien again, who's been on the show a few times. So all of my favorite researchers will be there. We'll be under the stars, and we're also going to be listening to some really great blues music. So I hope if you're in Utah or the neighboring states, drive out there, come support Nate and all of his hard work. It is a wonderful opportunity to have this fine event in Utah, and it highlights the importance of what goes on in the state of Utah, because as most of you know, we have places like Skinwalker Ranch and Dugway Proving Ground. We have a lot of activity, and it's great to shine a spotlight on that by having a wonderful event. At the end of the month and the beginning of July, I'm going to be at ECETI Ranch. I will be speaking there for their conference. I'm looking forward to this. I mentioned last week on the show that I will be there doing field research, interviewing people, and then giving my lecture. This will be a great opportunity for me to go to one of the world's hot spots and see what we can find, and then also participate in some CE5 protocols and different things, which I know some of you might gasp in horror, but I would ask each and every one of you, before you make a judgment call on the CE5 protocols or any of this, perhaps you should go try it and then tell me what you find, because I will be sure to tell you what I find. My guest this evening is a refreshing face in the field. I can't even tell you how grateful I am to see somebody new, somebody who is talented, and someone who has a different perspective on all of the stuff that goes on in this community. He has a really cool shtick, which I love. It's punk rock and UFOs. And I love that because being a musician, you know, it speaks to me. His website is Punk Rock and UFOs, Cryptozoology and Media. I dig this. We're going to have so much fun. Mike Damante is an author. He is a journalist. He wrote the book Punk Rock and UFOs, Cryptozoology Meets Anarchy. Love that title. He worked for the Houston Chronicle as a copy editor, writer, reporter, and web producer. He currently produces their mixed music blog and has interviewed some of my favorite musicians like Bad Religion, Blink-182. And this is going to be so freaking cool to talk about this. Tom DeLonge, Tegan and Sarah, Aerosmith. He currently teaches journalism and English in Houston, Texas. And Mike, I am so stoked to have you on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm stoked to be on. And what a great introduction. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. And I want to say that I thank you very much for writing that great article that you wrote talking about some of my sentiments with what's going on in the community right now, because it's important that other people, highlight this, because it's this whole thing is so dysfunctional.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I think one of the things I want to do on the site is highlight, not just the traditional stories. And I think it's kind of good to get to know the people who are involved in the research and the things that matter to them as well.
Well, that's wonderful. And like I said in the introduction, it's so great to see somebody new and somebody. I mean, this is important because for me, looking at the general population, I mean, the average age of people in this field or people that go to conferences is 60 plus.
Wow.
You ain't kidding.
I had no idea. I had no idea. So.
Yeah, it's crazy, and not that that's I love everybody at all the conferences, but it is a little disheartening to sit there and think, oh my God, how are we going to engage a younger generation to take this seriously?
Well, it's interesting because I believe a lot of younger people do believe. It's just what they do from there. It's one thing to say, oh well, yeah, sure, I believe. Right, but I think the problem is in general, and this is kind of what I touched about in my first book and the follow-up I'm working on, is it's one thing to believe in something, but it's another thing to actually actively seek news and actually care. And I think that's kind of one of the biggest challenges today facing this stuff is, sure, you could be aware of something and believe it, but awareness has to progress. It can't just be a general belief. You have to do, I think, a little bit more nowadays in terms of just getting this stuff out there and kind of trying to mainstream it as much as possible.
And that's great. And I think that expresses, I think, the sentiment of the younger generation. I mean, to me, we're definitely, it's encouraging to see some of the younger generation get really politically active and to take a stand. And I think we, in my generation, we get a little complacent. And it's like, oh, somebody else is going to do it for us, so we don't need to go to that political meeting, or we don't need to, do A, B, C, or D because it will be done. But look where that gets us. It gets us in the current political state that we're in, and it's not a good thing. And I think that's the same is true with the UFO stuff.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's pretty refreshing. Me being currently an educator, I see some of the younger generation, for the most part, I mean, a lot of them are apathetic towards what's going on, in the world around us, but the ones that are interested and well-informed, that's always pretty cool. When I have a student, keeping up with politics or they know what's going on in the world outside of my class, outside of me, quizzing them on current events, for them to actually be, kind of woke in terms of, the environment and the political climate around them.
And that's so important because I don't know if I've ever lived through a time that is so frightening.
No, I agree. It just, I have a friend who always kind of tries to play it off saying it's not that bad. And I'm like, no, it is that bad. I mean, there's realities that the average person doesn't face on a daily basis. But, some of these fears we have about what's going on, could pretty much be reality soon.
Absolutely. It is. We just can't afford to be complacent anymore. And I think that hopefully we'll all do something about that and before it's too late. But with regard to the UFO topic, I want to find out how you first got interested in this.
All right, so when I was a kid, I was always into reading. I read a lot. And Time Life magazine had this monthly series of books. It would be these hardcover books. There's pictures in them. There were stories. And each month, it was like a subscription service. Each month would be a new book. And my mom got them for me. And one month was, I think, Mysterious Creatures, Unknown Places, the UFO phenomenon. And I just remember as a young kid, I mean, the pictures stood out to me. And it was just the pictures, it was the words too. And I just jumped right in. And ever since that young age, I just became fascinated with the unknown and the unexplained and the paranormal. I never stopped being interested in it. I would say the past couple of years, my interest peaked more than it previously, it had.
So have you had a sighting or anything?
Yeah, I've had two sightings. So I live in Houston, Texas, which isn't too far from NASA. There's a lot of sightings that happen in that area, which is, it's called Clear Lake, Texas. There's a lot of sightings that happen there. And the sightings I seen actually happened on my part of town. One of them, I was driving home from work one night. This is when I used to work at the Eastern Chronicle, and it's, I get off about 1 a.m. because news doesn't end at 5 o'clock. So I was driving home from work, and this pretty common part of town. It was right when the two major highways meet, and I saw an orb in the sky. And it was just, standing there, just hovering. And the next thing you know, it just shot out of, my view. And I remember going home, updating my Facebook status about it, expecting people to say, oh, you're crazy or whatever. And I had a bunch of people saying, oh, I saw the same thing. Oh, was it over by the movie theater? I saw that too. Wow. A bunch of people saw the same thing. So I thought that was really fascinating. And when researching my book, I researched a bunch of databases. And obviously, it's a very common occurrence, that type of sighting, but specifically in this area, that's a common occurrence as well. The second one sighting I had was actually in broad daylight. On my part of town, I was driving kind of towards more the suburbs. I live in the suburbs, but I was driving a little bit further into it. And during the daytime, and I saw something in the sky that looked like a helicopter without the propeller that wasn't moving. And I just remember it defied anything, that we know about our laws of physics, about how something without any propulsion, visible propulsion can just hover in the air like that. And, the weirdest thing is, looking back, you're always like, oh, if I ever see something again, the first thing I'm going to do is pull out my camera and take a picture. But sometimes you're just, I was just so in awe. I really didn't know what to do or what to think. And, like I said, I've been into this stuff for years. So, I obviously knew what it was, but just to actually see something like that in broad daylight, I was driving on the highway, so it's not like I could pull over and try to, but just in those few passing moments, it's almost like time stopped, The only thing I could concentrate on was looking at that and not crash my car.
That's a good point. So, and it's interesting because so many people, some of the skeptics, well, why don't you pull out your camera? Why don't we have any good photos? Well, let me tell you, because it's incredibly difficult to get a good photo, especially at night. It's next to impossible. And then you've got the fact that you're doing other things. And then I believe that some people who are exposed to this, I believe that there is it's almost like they shut down and they're incapable of picking up a camera. And I've heard several researchers I respect tremendously talk about how that happens.
Yeah, I've heard many stories too where people feel frozen, who they feel like time has stopped, or in some cases, time has actually stopped for them. But yeah, I definitely think there's this, suspension of belief when that happens too. There's just suspension of time, belief, and then, yeah, it's it's easy for someone to say, oh, well, you should have just got a camera and, shoot a full video. And also, on camera phones, the quality is not going to be good too.
Right.
So
even though
people understand.
No, they don't even, and if you are lucky enough to get a picture, it's just going to be a little dot on your screen. And, there will always be somebody out there to say it's a bug, it's a bird. I mean, just there's such a, I don't know. I think that it's great to have people that are critical when they're analyzing photographs and video, but it's also, I think that people can go a little overboard and dismiss credible cases.
Oh yeah, for sure. When I kind of want to go off subject for a second, but in the book I kind of detail this debate I had. It's called the Great Bigfoot Debate, is what I call it. And when I was working at the Eastern Chronicle, our science writer, who's our science and weather guy, he tweeted something about how 1 in 3 Americans believe in Bigfoot, and he kind of made like some snarky comment about that. And we just kind of went back and forth on it on Twitter for a while until it was one of the higher ups picked up on our little Twitter beef or whatever, and they actually wanted to have us debate on a Google Hangout, and we did. We debated live. We had people commenting, and one of his arguments was, well, how come we don't have that many close up pictures? I'm like, well, we do have photos. But I mean, honestly, who's if Bigfoot does exist and it's everything people say it is, who's going to get up within 5 feet of it and try to take a picture? Like if you're in the woods, you're going to go up to a grizzly bear and try to take a selfie with it. Like, it's the same concept. And one of my whole arguments was, we're constantly discovering new species every year. Thousands of species are being discovered, big and small. I believe in 2000, I forgot which year it was, but the largest cave in the entire world was discovered in Brazil, which has been hiding for centuries. So if something that large could go undiscovered, there's obviously opens a door for the possibilities of other species being out there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's my argument as well. And I think at some point in time, people, when you've got NASA making announcements every day and you've got different researchers making discoveries and different, it's just like, my God, at what point do you just say, hey, guess what? I'm not the center of the universe.
Yeah, I think that goes against, kind of just our ego, as in humanity. Like, as humans, we're very, by our nature, what do? We're about conquest, right? We're about colonization, right? And then when we figure out we're not the king of the jungle, it's obviously blow to our ego. And I talked about in the first book something called the Fermi paradox. And part of it states that, what if the Earth is just kind of like an aquarium? And, other civilizations are just visiting us, looking at us like in an aquarium or like a zoo. And I think that's, to a lot of people, that's a blow to our ego as being, not being the king of the jungle.
Well, I hate to tell you, but we got a lot of egos we need to deflate out there. It's just there's not a lot of humility. I don't understand that. Like you say, we're making new discoveries every day. And at some point in time, we have to realize that by us being so egocentric, that that will be our downfall, because something will be going on right in front of our face and we'll react to it too late.
And I think that goes with everything. You have climate change, for example. That's just another thing where people can't get past their certain belief systems and established beliefs to kind of look at evidence or say, hey, well, what if this other person's right?
Right. I know it's interesting, but hopefully, I don't know what. Hopefully, we can make some change, at least in the world of cryptozoology and ufology and all of that, because this, to me, like when I look at the research, when I'm out doing, interviewing people or doing field research studies, it is shocking to me that we don't take this situation for the seriousness that it deserves, because there is something here that is absolutely interacting with us, and the potential for harm to us, I think, is pretty significant.
Are we talking about UFOs or
UFOs, climate change? All of it. You could lump that all in together. Why not? But you know what I mean? It's like we're not proactive.
Well,
we're reactive.
We've kind of been conditioned, to think a certain way, and we have our established beliefs. It's been ingrained in our pop culture too.
Right.
And just to kind of further that point about Hollywood, I firmly believe that was part of the kind of mainstreaming the idea of UFOs. But it came to the sense where it just became ingrained in our pop culture. UFOs or aliens or plush toys for kids. They're on T-shirts. So I think Hollywood definitely did a big role of putting this idea of fiction out there.
Yeah, and it's interesting just to see that whole inner working with the government and then the movie industry, and there's so much to this topic. There's so much meat to it, and so many places you could go to research, and specialize in things. That would be cool in another life for me to research that, but you know how that goes.
Yeah.
But so you had your sightings, and then did you talk to, I know on the first sighting you talked to different people to get their feedback, but with the second sighting where you were on the freeway, did you talk to anybody about that?
I didn't actually. I just told a few close friends, and they're just like, whatever. They just kind of brushed it off. But I just kind of looked up, because I had an idea of from previously, just from being into this stuff, exactly what it was. But I just looked up similar sightings in databases, and it wasn't something super rare. It was something I'd previously read about before too. It was more of kind of the racer type helicopter looking UFO that's been sighted before.
Wow, that must have been a little disconcerting to you.
Well, the thing that tripped me, it was my first day of work at a new job, and I was driving there, and it's the first thing I see. And I was like, that was a good sign, I thought.
Well, that's a good way to take it.
Yeah.
But, it's interesting. Last summer, I had the pleasure, I was over in England, and I went to a crop circle, and it was a fresh crop circle. And it was really interesting to me, and I believe it was genuine. I know there's some debate about that, but it was interesting to me to process that event, because I got back to my hotel, and then kind of the reality sets in, and then it was a shocking experience, and it was really interesting to look back at the way I processed it. So you were probably you had that initial, oh my gosh, and then as the day went on, you probably processed that, and I'm sure that was really interesting.
And I think you make a really good point of when someone actually experiences something for the first time. When you see something, it's different than just reading about it or seeing it on TV. It kind of brings everything in.
It doesn't. Do you wonder, or did you wonder when you had your sightings, why me? Why am I seeing these things?
No, because I feel like the sightings I saw, they were seen by other people as well. And it wasn't the case where, I've been seeing them my whole life. I've been waiting for my whole life to see something finally. But now, I feel like I see stuff in the sky all the time that's unexplained, whether it's drones or, low-flying airplanes. Every time I see lights in the sky, I always kind of give it a second and third look, just because I'm just so predetermined to believe everything could be a UFO.
But you know what, though? I think that's really important that you had those experiences, and then you pay attention, you look up, and I think we all need to do that. Look at our surroundings, be involved in what's going on, and not just in front of our faces, but up in the sky, because I think we need to be alert for a multitude of reasons.
Yeah, and it's funny because when I was reading, when I first discovered you, and I was reading about how you got into UFOs and how you had a chance sighting that kind of reignited your interest, and that kind of felt like it was very similar to me, to my situation. How I read about this stuff as a kid, then I saw a few things, and then slowly my interest started creeping back, and then next thing you know, you're diving headfirst into this stuff, into zoology.
I love it. Oh, yeah. And I can't wait. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. We're going to take a break. I'm Erica Lukes, and this is UFO Classified. Again, my friends, I am not in chat room tonight. This is a pre-record, but I'll tell you a little bit more where I am at when we get back from the break. Catch you on the other side.
Stand by. This is UFO Classified with Erica Lukes. Erica Lukes. The phone lines are open now at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio. More UFO Classified. UFO Classified with Erica Lukes on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. After this. You're listening to UFO Classified with Erica Lukes, where the truth isn't hidden beneath the black lines of a Sharpie.
That's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
To be on with Erica, call 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio.
Radio contact.
Share your thoughts on the show on Twitter by using hashtag KCOR. Or head over to the live chats at KCORradio.com.
The audience goes nuts.
And now, your host of UFO Classified.
Are you ready?
Erica Lukes. Erica Lukes.
Welcome back, everyone, and happy Fantopia Friday. You are listening to the best broadcasting network in the world, KCOR, and it is a night full of powerful, wonderful women. So grab a margarita, get in your fuzzy pajamas, and stick around for an entertaining and informative night on KCOR. My fabulous producer has her show tonight. I want to give her a shout out, Tina Marie, and thank her for running such a wonderful station and giving me a home where I feel supported. This is a great place to be, and I'm happy I found you, Tina. Thank you for all you do for me. I am not here or in chat tonight, but I'm down at the Utah UFO Festival, so I will have lots to report on next week's show. It'll be fantastic, and I will be posting things to UFO Classified Facebook page. So just look and you can see what I'm doing, where I'm at. It's very exciting, I'm sure. But I know I'll have good stories, especially about Skinwalker Ranch, because we will be talking about that with some of the best researchers in the world that have grown up in the area that have information to share with us, like Ryan Burns, like Dave Rosenfeld. So I will be updating you. But tonight, my really rad guest is someone who is a fresh face in the scene, somebody who I think can really give new life to this, and then all of us can work together to engage a younger generation, which will be incredibly important to carry on the work done by the older generations in this field. Mike Damante has a really kick-butt website, which is called punkrockandufos.com, and he's also a journalist and author. He wrote the book Punk Rock and UFOs, Cryptozoology Meets Anarchy. And I just love that title. It's so cool. But he does a music blog. He's interviewed Tom DeLonge, which I know, none of us in the UFO field know anything about. But, when we left off, we were talking about Mike's sightings and how similar to my sightings, but kind of it instilled something in us. It pushed us in a direction, which is very cool. And here we are tonight with all of you. But I mean, seriously, Mike, I'm so happy that I met you.
Oh no, thank you. It's cool to make friends over the internet, and then it's really cool. So no, I appreciate having me on. I'm really stoked for this.
I know, it's so cool, and I mean, you've had some interesting experiences, and especially with when you throw in the musician to the mix, and having interviewed, oh my gosh, Tom DeLonge. Let's start talking about that, because he's certainly a hot button in the community.
Yeah, for sure. Unfortunately, when I've interviewed him about three times. They were all related to music. This was when Blink did their reunion tour, then another tour, and then when he was with Angels and Airwaves, I interviewed him backstage at they're opening up for Weezer in Houston, and actually got to sit down with him, and it was really cool. Time constraints, and from the stories I was doing, I didn't get to any UFO questions in, unfortunately. And this was, he was always into this stuff, but this was before, he's took on his current project. I've tried to speak to him since, and he's been hard to get a hold of. I'm still going to try to eventually reach out to his publicist and try to get something, hopefully this summer. I kind of want to go up to his office in San Diego and sit down with him. That would be dope. But yeah, I'm really following everything what he's doing, because I know it's kind of a hot button issue. And just today, actually, on Facebook, I was defending him on someone's Facebook status. So it's definitely, I think a lot of people are accusing him of being a profiteer, of trying to make money off this.
Right.
But it's ridiculous, because, he's set for life when it comes to money. And, his company, To the Stars, he really doesn't make much money off it. He has a very small group of people that he works with, and pretty much any of his profits go to those people. So obviously he's not doing it for the money. He's been in this stuff, for years. So I think his heart's in the right place, and he's kind of surrounded himself with some of the right people in terms of in the industry of, people that a lot of big names that people respect.
Well, and it's interesting because, I hear a lot in the UFO community. People are always, pounding on their chest, saying, oh, this person's making money, and it's like, are you really? This is whatever. I believe personally that when you're working at something, you have the right to make money at it. And we devote a lot of our time and our resources and energy and sacrifice more than the average person would, with risk to our family and friends. Why shouldn't we make a couple bucks on a book?
Well, exactly. And the thing is, too, he's written so far two books, a fiction and a nonfiction book regarding the Secret Machine series, which is his his UFO brand. But if anyone knows anything about royalties, you're not going to be rich off royalties from a book unless you're like Stephen King. So it's not like he's trying to get rich off this. I mean, he walked away from one of the biggest bands in the world to do this. You know, he walked away from millions of more dollars touring and recording with Blink-182 to pursue this fully. So I think a lot of people kind of tend to forget that or don't take that into consideration.
Right, absolutely. Well, I mean, it's always the same skeptical people, I think, that have to find something to complain about. I think for me, I was speaking at UFO Congress, and I was sitting at a table of other researchers when Tom DeLonge won the award of Researcher of the Year. And I think, all of us, I think there was kind of a gasp, in the air, because I'm sitting next to some of these researchers that I know are absolutely amazing and have done and will do groundbreaking work. And then I look at perhaps what Tom DeLonge has done. He's done amazing stuff as well. But he's somebody that we don't see who is active in our community. Yeah. I mean, obviously he's got friends in the right places. But what's going on? What's the big announcement? Why haven't we seen that yet? There's so many questions.
Yeah, for sure. And I think he's even one of the reasons why he hasn't been at any of these things, and is the fact that he's crazy in the sense where he surrounds himself with so much projects at once. I think that was one of the reasons why he couldn't be in Blink-182 anymore. Right now he's doing the Secret Machine series, which has 2 more fiction books with A.J. Hartley, and then 2 more nonfiction books with Peter Lavenda. He has that. He's making a young adult teen movie, and he's making another movie from another franchise he has. So on top of that, music, a family, running a business, like those are a lot of things. And I think he tends to spread himself thin, and he's never been good with deadlines. So whatever this announcement is being pushed back, part of it he kind of said the whole John Podesta leak email kind of pushed everything back, and it's all going to make sense. Tom's always done a really good job of promoting his stuff and building suspense and drama for anything he's been in. And sometimes he's over-promoted stuff. And, whether he delivers or not, we'll see. But I don't think we should fault him for trying.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think, too, there's a certain type of person who is a musician or a front person. And they're always good up front and creating the buzz and doing all of those things. And then, on the back end, and I totally get that. I think sometimes it's the personality types and things like that. So it'll be interesting. But I know that I have heard him speak before. I've seen him on Larry King and listened to radio interviews with him, and he is very articulate and incredibly knowledgeable about what he puts forward. And I think people are not giving him credit for the amount of research that he's actually put into this.
Yeah, when he was, when Blink first hit it big and they started getting money, the first thing he ever bought was a computer so he could research UFOs. And this was in his early 20s. So, I mean, he's been into this stuff for years, which a lot of people don't realize.
Wow. And he's contributed a lot more than most researchers in the field.
Well, he admitted, I think, when he got that award that, I'm just like all you guys. I just happen to have a celebrity, that was able to get his foot in the door.
As far as I'm concerned, people have to utilize the means that they have. And if somebody has a platform like that, then good for them for taking the chance and putting it out there.
Yeah, if anything, I think people should be kind of happy that he's using that to, try to, slowly bring some of this stuff to light. One of the main concerns I have was the first book, the Secret Machines book, Chasing Shadows. It was actually really good. And you could tell, it's historical fiction. A lot of it's based on stuff that's happened. And, if you're into the stuff like we are, if you read the book, you would know, this is where he got this from. And I was kind of disappointed that they're doing a fiction book and a nonfiction book. I was hoping all of it to be nonfiction. I guess I kind of see where they're coming from in the sense where they're trying to, get the stuff out there to as many people as possible, whether it's appealing to young adults, people who are into reading thrillers, whatever. I kind of get that. I would prefer if all the books were nonfiction, because the first Secret Machines fiction book, Gods, was pretty good. It didn't really, there's nothing groundbreaking. and it didn't really come through with what Tom has promised he's learned, but it teases to stuff in the other books that I'm kind of curious about. The one thing that stood out to me in the Gods book, so the Gods book, I don't know if you guys read it yet. It kind of looks at the ancient alien theory and Zachariah Stitchin, but it's kind of more of an investigative journalist approach. It kind of digs a little bit deeper than what they did, and it's not necessarily supportive of it, but it's a little bit more subjective sometimes. And one of the things that stood out to me, a high-ranking ex-military government official said to Tom, dig deeper when it comes to Greek mythology. And I thought that was very fascinating from the theories and some of the stuff that I've read to hear somebody in that power kind of tell Tom, this is where you need to start digging a little deeper.
That is interesting. And I always wonder, because I've been doing research about some of the kind of the organizations or groups that are kind of, the puppet masters behind the scenes. And I always have to ask myself, what is their motivation or what is their agenda when they're pointing somebody in a direction?
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I feel like they can't fully disclose, some stuff to the public, but they can at least hint. And if you're hinting at something, with someone who's very knowledgeable, I think you could kind of steer them from there. But I mean, there's some people, who came out, after the fact, Paul Hellyer, ex-Canadian Ministry of Defense, I think he's one of the biggest names. Right now I'm reading the book, The Day After Roswell by Philip Corso, which is, I think the evidence is overwhelming in this book. These are people close to these situations, high-ranking officials. What do they have to gain from this?
Absolutely. But then, a brief thought comes into my mind. Perhaps some of these people do have something to gain. Maybe they do have a vested interest in this, or the way things are being pushed out to the population. I mean, maybe it's just that if you kind of instill this sense of fear or panic, then we are going to be spending more money weaponizing things, and therefore you're getting, the aerospace companies or defense contractors are getting more of a kickback. I mean, I don't know. Sometimes I should probably just go to sleep and call it a day.
No, I mean, it's definitely an interesting approach.
But I think it's true. The one thing that I've really learned in this field is you can't take anything at face value, because there's always a motive, an agenda.
Well, what I talk about in the first book is when I started getting into journalism in college, my professor, the first thing he taught us was question everything. And it's kind of something you need to apply in life, when you're reading any news story, especially when it comes to UFOs and cryptozoology. And cryptozoology is kind of treated like a bastard science, so, and there's, with so many hoaxes and all those things going around, you have to be careful. And, I feel like, that makes it harder to make these arguments and to, make things more legitimate when you're constantly fighting an uphill battle.
It does make it difficult, but I mean, then again, it's like, oh my gosh, I see, we get these Facebook groups going with a bunch of blowhards that always have to be right and different things, or put other people down, or slander other people, whatever. But it is interesting to me how we could absolutely, as researchers, reframe the way that is dealt with, and not even deal with these critics. It's like we give them so much time and energy, when if we just put our heads down and focused on research and moving in a different direction, I think we could accomplish a lot more.
Oh yeah. I agree, but there's still obstacles, I believe, that are facing UFO research in general, that stand in the way. That I think these barriers are never going to go down, because unless the general populace gets more involved and more interested.
Well, I think if I have anything to say about it, some of them might have a thing or two coming to them. But because there's just so much bad behavior, and I have mentioned before that I think part of the problem is we don't have professional standards or ethical standards in this field. And it's probably more so in the UFO field than perhaps even cryptozoology. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I just think there needs to be ethical standards in any organization. I mean, think about it, any job you have, right? Anytime you represent something, there needs to be standards. There need to be ethical standards in how you present yourself as an organization and the people you want representing your organization. And if there's anything that goes against that, those people should be disavowed immediately. I think there's no excuse for it. If kind of what you're hinting at what happened with MUFON and the racist post, and I just remember the response from the executive director, and the response was awful. It was just almost like this devil's advocate, kind of prancing around the issue, failing to disavow the comments in the first place and move forward from it. It was an absolutely awful response.
It was strange to me. I mean, I just read that and thought, what? I mean, any good communications director or somebody who's, in charge of an organization would, learn from the mistakes of other organizations and things, and they would be very deliberate and concise about the way they handled that. And not, I mean, it just seems like from the get-go, they just exacerbated things with, the initial statement from the executive director and then the communications director's rant on Facebook or on the MUFON page, and then the deletion of comments. And it was just one debacle after another, which is unfortunate because it affects a lot of really good people inside the organization.
Yeah, and then the organization loses credibility. Because if you think about it, any professional organization should have somebody, you should have a public relations team or a public relations department or person, right? A publicist, somebody to do damage control in a case like this. And if you don't have damage control and you're just doing things to make matters worse, you're hurting the credibility of your organization and everyone involved. So it kind of trickles down like that. Think about it. If, somebody in the limelight, a celebrity, or an athlete, they do something bad, right?
Yep.
And immediately, they can apologize, right? But that's going to stick with them forever. Whether the apology is accepted or not, people are going to view them as with the behavior or what they did. So, sometimes, an apology is not enough,
Right. Right. But it certainly is a start, It's a good plan, you make a big mistake and you apologize, you own up to it and try to move forward. But it's interesting, and I think that unfortunately we have to keep talking about things like this and reliving it if we want to make the field better. And that's just the way it rolls, because I think we've seen kind of an older generation in this field just brush things under the carpet. And as a result, this kind of crap continues, and it's not healthy for people coming into this or people that want to have longevity in the field. And so, I appreciate you speaking out about it and talking about it. It's important.
Oh, I appreciate it. And that's the type of, I kind of want to cover the different types of stories on punkrockandufos.com. And that was something that, I wanted to get some of the researchers and some of the people involved. I wanted to get their reactions and comments on it. So yeah, those are some of the types of stories that we want to do, not just the traditional sighting stories.
Well, I think it's wonderful. And like I said, I love the slant that you have pulling in the punk rock, and you've got, it's so catchy, and the whole thing is really, really cool. And I want to talk a little bit more when we get back from our next break about your book and about the blog and some of the interviews that you've conducted, because it's very cool. Even if Tom DeLonge didn't talk about UFOs, you still got to meet him, and you could get your impression of him and see how hectic his life is. It's a very, very cool thing. For
sure.
Who is your favorite musician that you've interviewed so far?
That's a tough one. So, Tom would be up there just because, Blink-182 is one of the bands that changed my life, and he was always my favorite, and just because we have a lot in common in terms of interest, UFOs, and especially how nice Tom was, how cool he was. Greg Graffin from Bad Religion was dope, just because he inspired me to go to college and write, and he's just highly intelligent. He's a college professor. He's an author. He has a PhD. And recently I got to, the older I get, I've done so many of these interviews, you kind of just want to do the bucket list ones. And I was able to interview Milo Ackerman from The Descendants, which is definitely a bucket list interview for me. and I drove to Austin, Texas, just to do the interview. They were playing Sound by Sound Festival. They didn't go on until 11:45 that night. I didn't have a place to stay. I drove up. I did the interview. I listened to two bands. And I drove back that night just because I was so stoked to actually get the interview up and running. So that was probably one of the most recent ones I was really stoked upon, just because, I mean, Descendants was a legendary pop-punk band, and Milo's a biochemist as well. So these are people involved in like punk rock who are also involved in other things too, academia and the science fields.
Wow. How fascinating. I mean, and you sound a lot like I am. I love talking to people and digging into their personal experiences, and it's just a fascinating thing. And you learn so much by doing that.
Yeah, I learned Milo believes in UFOs. Greg Graffin from Bad Religion doesn't. He's one of those guys, he needs the evidence and proof right in front of him.
Well, you know, we all have to have our own opinions.
Yeah.
That's so awesome. Oh my gosh. Okay, so we're going to get ready and take our break, and we'll be back with the second half of our show after this. Make sure you get into UFOclassified.com. Check out the website, share the show, go to KCOR. All the archives for the show are available. Share the shows. It's important that you also reach out to me. So find me on Facebook, and definitely make sure you visit punkrockandufos.com to learn about the work of my guest tonight, who is just a kick-butt guy. I'm so happy to have Mike on the show. Can't say that enough, but I probably will say it at least 100 more times. I'm Erica Lukes, and we will catch you on the other side of the break.
Listen very carefully.
This is Houston. Say again, please. Houston, we've had a problem.
This is UFO Classified, live every Friday night, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The truth is out there, just waiting to be discovered.
And now, if you will, accompany me on a journey to the future.
For more information on the host of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes, upcoming guests, as well as links to the past shows, visit her website at UFOclassified.com. UFO Classified. UFO Classified. This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a shack just south of Area 51. Wait, that doesn't exist. This is the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Now for the news.
The disc landed at a ranch at Corona, New Mexico. The rancher turned it over to the Air Force. Rancher W.W. Brazil was the man who discovered the saucer.
What I thought was a star began coming in my direction at a very rapid rate of speed.
The unidentified object, which some sources thought might be a blimp, moved slowly down the Pacific coast from Santa Monica and disappeared south of Long Beach.
I saw a UFO, and it went down the river, turned right at the United Nations, turned left, and then down the river.
UFO Classified. UFO Classified. No more plausible deniability. Fact, fiction, or the truth. You decide. And now, the new voice of the high desert, the hostess of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes.
Welcome back, everybody. I hope you're having a fabulous Friday night. You know that I am, because I am, right now, I am sure I will be sitting at a table listening to other people talk at the Utah UFO Festival. We will be having a really important discussion with some great people about disclosure. And I might have a few things to say about that, but I'll let you know after the Utah UFO Festival. I don't know. And I want to bring Mike, my guest this evening, who has punk rock and UFOs, cryptozoology and media. He's an author and journalist. And I wanted to go in. I just want to ask you, what do you think about disclosure?
It's funny. I was asked this recently. I was taping a podcast somewhere in the skies with Ryan, and he asked me that too. And I think it's important, but at the end of the day, it doesn't mean anything because the general public doesn't care enough. Unless we have, live news coverage of UFOs landing at the White House or, every major, spot in the world, I think it's going to take something that drastic to get the general populace caring enough.
I agree.
I mean, we've had stuff, disclosed for years. Project Blue Book is something, that was mainstreamed. And I kind of talk about in the book how the media covers stuff as well. It's just, people have to care enough. And I think we need to get to the point where it's in our mainstream enough where we're actively seeking the stuff. So to me, like, honestly, I mean, it sounds kind of, half as glass full, but disclosure doesn't mean much if we don't have enough people caring about it.
Right. And that's a brilliant point. That's exactly right on. And I honestly, to me, I think that pushing for disclosure is kind of like spitting in the wind, to be honest. I used to think, okay, yay, great, let's do this. The government's going to disclose information. I really don't think that's going to happen. And I wonder if, I don't know. I mean, I just think it's a waste of time. Did I actually say that on the air? Maybe Tina can edit that out. I don't know. It's my gut now. That's where I am today, but that changes day by day, as I'm sure your opinions on the topic do as well.
For sure.
But when we left off, you were talking about some of the cool interviews you had the opportunity to do with some of the punk rock legends. And I mean, God, how incredible to sit in the same room with Milo and to talk to him, even if he doesn't believe in UFOs. Whatever. I guess I'll forgive him for that because he's a pretty great musician. But
he actually believes. It's Greg Graffin.
Oh, it's Greg?
Yeah,
okay, well.
Greg,
oh, dear. So when you brought that up to him, what was his initial response?
Who, Greg?
Yeah, Greg.
Well, before the interview, I told him, I gave him a copy of my book and said, hey, you're one of the persons who inspired me. Even the title of the book, Cryptozoology Meets Anarchy. I mean, that's kind of a play off one of his books. He has one called Anarchy Evolution, and I just thought the name kind of sounded like a Bad Religion album title when I was coming up with the name of the book. But yeah, no, he was, I asked him if I could ask him about it. He said, sure. And he's one of those guys where, like I said, he needs to have the evidence in front of him. Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say, did he say what evidence would be enough for him?
No, I didn't probe him that deeper just because it was just, a small portion of the interview. I was just going to ask him that one question. Bad Religion was on tour. He was coming out with a solo record he was working on. So I think those are some things he wanted to promote as well.
Right. Absolutely.
Like when you're interviewing people, you're only allotted a certain amount of a certain amount of time. So you kind of want to, use your questions wisely, and especially the story you're writing too. Everything has to kind of, the angle of your story and your questions have to match. Sometimes I'll ask these questions just for my own personal gain and, for some things I want to use outside of that story down the line.
Interesting. Oh, that's so cool. What a fun thing. I mean, I love that whole lifestyle and seeing different people like that. It's a bizarre lifestyle, but my gosh, it takes a special human being to go on tour for decade after decade and to create music. Sometimes they're warped, that's okay.
Yeah.
That's so great. So when you interviewed Tegan and Sarah, and I really like them a lot, did you have the opportunity to even broach the UFO topic?
No, it was over the phone. It was the day of the show over the phone. So I only got like 8 minutes. So I was actually lucky to even get the interview. It was with Sarah. And this was, it was the Honda Civic tour. It was them, Paramore, and New Found Glory. And it was just an absolutely great lineup.
Wow. And I have to tell you, you'll be like totally stoked about this. But last summer, we have a concert venue here in Utah called Red Butte Gardens. And it's this outside venue. It is absolutely insanely gorgeous. And there was a concert. Tears for Fears was playing. And there was a mass sighting over the concert. I mean, hundreds of people, including the stage crew. And from some reports, the band. They all witnessed these objects, and it made it in the paper. And of course, we had a fellow from the local observatory saying that they were Chinese lanterns, without doing research, which I have to say, I promptly called him up and kind of told him what I thought about that approach, being the demure little flower I am. But we actually did radar and on that case. And it was interesting. So we're talking about musicians and UFOs. It was pretty interesting. I'll send you the the case stuff.
Yeah, for sure. It's fascinating. I mean, how cool that would be to be, watching a concert at an amphitheater and see something up above like that.
I wonder how many Grateful Dead concerts things flew over and people were just tripping too much to realize there was something going over.
It's funny.
Oh, my Lord. You're a little too young for that whole Deadhead thing, though. I'm thinking. Not your genre.
Not my genre, but I'm not that young. So.
Well, I think, as we have established, you're much younger than most people in the field. So that's good.
Thank you.
So let's talk about your book and where you got the idea to write it.
So people always ask me this, and I think the title is a great conversation starter, and I think it's what draws people to the book. Like when I was writing, a lot of my friends were like, Mike, what does punk rock and UFOs have to do? Like, what do they have in common? And I always tell people, don't think of punk rock in the musical sense. Think of it in the rebellious nature. And, I talk about how, cryptozoology is an underdog science, and growing up in the punk rock scene, punk rock music and a lot of the artists, they have the underdog mentality. And punk rock and UFOs is the idea of it is kind of rebelling against certain beliefs and belief systems. And that's kind of what the book is about. And that's the type of attitude and the tone of the book. And what I'm trying to recreate on the website as well. So yeah, that's kind of in a nutshell what the book's about. And it kind of digs in deeper. I have some theories in there. But basically it examines kind of, how stories are covered and played up on the news, as well as our own memories and our cognition, what we choose to believe. And I'm currently working on the follow-up, and I'm digging a little bit deeper into why we choose to believe certain things. And actually, the interview I did with you for the website, punkrockandufos.com, some of your quotes I want to use in the book just because they went perfect with what I was writing anyway. Like, it's in journalism, it's called transition graph. So when you have a paragraph before a quote, and before it's crazy because you didn't even know I was writing this, and your words fit in perfectly in these spaces between the quotes and the paragraphs. So
cool.
Thank you in advance.
Absolutely. No, I'm honored. That's really, really cool. And I'll support you any way I can with your new book. This is wonderful. But I mean, I really love where you are going with the punk rock and UFOs and comparing that to the underdogs of the world. And what type of research did you do or are you doing for your books?
Well, it's funny. The first book was more theory and idea-driven than research. I did a little bit of research just in terms to try to make sense of what I cited. It's very theory-driven. The next book has a little bit more research in terms of our cognition and what we choose to rebel against and what we choose to believe and what we choose to swallow. In the first book, though, like I said, a lot of it's theory-driven, and some of those theories came from research. I was reading a lot of different stuff at the time. So one of the things I kind of talk about in the book, it's a guy named Dr. Robert Lanza. He was a very respected doctor, and he released a book called Biocentrism, How Life and Unconscious Are the Keys to Understanding the Nature of the Universe. And this doctor came up with this idea of biocentrism, which is when we die, our life can still live on. And basically what he's saying is our consciousness is our soul. And I thought that was very fascinating. So I kind of tie that into this idea of, just from so much stuff I've read about people's experiences, whether abductions and near-death experiences, and how so much of them run together, right? Mm-hmm. People who claim to be visited sometimes describe it as angelic. People who have near-death experiences always say they see a light, they hear the voice of an angel or a dead relative, or sometimes they even say that they see aliens, right? So it's all these very similar sensory perceptions that these people have. And I kind of thought about this idea is, what if, when we die, our souls are consciousness and they travel to heaven. When I say heaven, I say in quotation marks. It's not in the biblical sense. But what if heaven is a place that we physically can't get to in our physical state? What if it's some part of the universe where we can't travel in our physical state? And I even kind of, came up with this theory, which once again is just a theory. I don't fully believe it, but what if, in some way, aliens have always been visiting us. They've always been here. They're kind of serving and guardian angels in some sense. And I kind of, it's kind of a, theory where, if you bring it up to someone religious, it may sound blasphemous, but it's just a little theory I have just, based on just from years of reading different accounts of visitations and people's experiences. I just kind of tied those things together, and I think that's one of the more interesting theories I have in the book.
Oh, that's fascinating, and it is. There's so many parallels when you dig into this topic. I mean, the near-death experiences, like you're saying, are very curious, and I think that the paranormal aspect can't be overlooked, and we make that mistake a lot in ufology. We completely throw out an important part of the data.
Yeah, I always think it's good to be open-minded because there's so many possibilities out there, and I don't think we should discredit any of them. I think they should all get their we should still question everything. As I mentioned earlier, questioning everything is always good, but always have an open mind.
Well, and that's true. And but I don't know. You always have to have one foot on the ground. Yeah, I mean, and honestly, maybe you don't. I don't know. So because I have to ask you, have you looked at some of the contact groups and some of the CE5 protocols or things like that? And what is your feeling? Do we have certain factions in this field that are turning this into a religion?
See, I never got too much into that. Anytime where someone starts something as a religion, I think you should automatically be skeptical. Because there's a profit to be made somewhere, right? I understand, many people believe that aliens are the gods, and I'm one of those people who believe that. But I don't think in any way we should, worship or turn any of this stuff into any religion like that. I think that's kind of cult-like and just kind of detracts from everything. It's really easy to kind of take those people and put them in the not to offend anyone, but those are the type of people where you don't want them bringing attention to this stuff.
And I agree. I'm wondering. I honestly believe, and I would love to spend more time researching this, but I believe that when you're in areas where they're hot spots, or you're exposed to the phenomenon long term, that it might have psychological and physical implications. And so I wonder sometimes, does that play into this zealot-like behavior? I don't know, but I think it's important to step back sometimes and say, wait a minute, perhaps this person is acting this way because of A, B, C, and D, not because they're trying to make a profit or they're, want to be a cult leader. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I think certain, I kind of go back to how we got reignited into, this interest. When you see something, you get inspired, and even just a sighting can inspire somebody. I think that's awesome. It's funny because some of the people who claim to be abducted, and some of their stories, they always say that they felt like they were influenced to do something greater or bigger ever since then. So I think there's something there. Whether it's just a sighting or an abduction or a feeling that there's something you can do that's bigger, than what you're currently doing, or there's a reason why you saw what you saw, or you're visited, or I think there's definitely something to that. Or there could be definitely something to that. I think that's something that needs to be researched further before we make hypothesis or a theory towards it. But I think there's something there to that idea.
It's also fascinating, and that's the thing. I mean, some days I want to go in this direction, and some days I want to go in that. And there's so many places to go, and it would be really ideal if anybody listening or new people coming into the field would just pick a direction and run with it, so we could make more progress.
Agreed.
I dare to dream. So tell me a little bit about, because I obviously researched the UFO side of things, but tell me a little bit more about where your cryptozoology research has led you, where you've gone with that.
Well, I always think UFOs and cryptozoology go hand in hand ever since a very young age, because they're both unexplained and undiscovered species, right? So I really think they go hand in hand. And I was always into, as a child, the Loch Ness Monster and Bigfoot. I still am to this day. I was constantly reading up about stories like that. And Every year we have new cryptids that aren't cryptids anymore, right? Then they become part of mainstream scientists and zoology. So it takes, these things to be discovered first before they be, accepted. But I mean, so many animals we see in zoos were once cryptids. I'm totally going to butcher this pronunciation. The okapu, I believe its name is. It's hard to describe what it looks like too, but that's something that's now in a lot of zoos that, for the longest time was, was cited by indigenous people and rumored, part of folklore, and it turned out being real. So I think there's a real possibility a lot of these cryptids do exist. But once again, it takes the scientists and the cryptozoologists willing to do so, and the funding. And I learned a lot, this past year, interviewing people, and I interviewed Erin Ryder from Destination Truth fame.
Oh, cool! Yeah,
punk rock and UFOs, and she gave me a really good perspective of it. She's like, people don't understand on these shows, you watch these shows and they always get so close into finding something, and it's such a big tease, right? And she explained, like, look, when you're on these expeditions, you're only there for a weekend. You're at this amount of time. What's the chances of finding something in this amount of time with so much parameters? And you have budget constraints. You're taping a show, so it's not like they can always go back and revisit. And there, outside the TV crew and staff, you don't have scientists and cryptozoologists constantly researching these things, right? It's not a constant thing. You may have somebody take an expedition, maybe once a month, right? Is that enough to fully find what you're looking for? Probably not. So I think a lot of people don't understand that in terms of the sense that with discovering this stuff takes time, it takes money, it takes manpower. There's so many logistical things that are involved that people tend to ignore or don't understand.
Right, and it's can be really boring.
Yeah, exactly. You could sit in a forest, for a weekend trying to find Bigfoot, and it's probably not going to happen. It's a lot of times, when people do sight, they're not looking for sightings. It just happens by chance.
Right. And I look at, we look at like Heshdal in Norway, where they've done such extensive work, but they've been fortunate because they've had funding, and they've been able to construct an actual physical location to put their instrumentation and to collect data. But that's yielded some great results. But it's, it's funding. It's all about funding. And I need funding. Somebody needs to, Mama needs some new night vision goggles. So I'm just going to throw that out there. I'll take donations for any equipment you've got.
Hey, you can't take money because that means you're a profiteer. Remember, right?
Oh, Lord. Yeah, I know. I've heard the story about that.
I'm kidding.
I know. It's awesome.
Anyway, buy my book, buy my merchandise, because I'm just a teacher. So there you go. I'm kidding. It's funny, I made t-shirts. I made t-shirts for the site as well. And people are like, oh, wow, you make money off that? I'm like, I made $20. That's it. So it's... And most of the shirts I sold were to myself.
Well, I bet you look good in them. That's important. You gotta kind of sport your own gear. But if it is true, it's like I think sometimes people don't have a concept of what it's like to be in business. Or
a lot of people who are into this stuff, who are researchers. I mean, it's not their full-time job. Unless you're working for SETI or NASA, a lot of people are doing this out of the, out of the goodness of their own heart or their interest in
it. They are, and a lot of people don't necessarily have an understanding of what it means to be in business. And I think that's some problems that I saw being involved in MUFON, especially with the headquarter level. It's like you have a lot of really smart people that are good behind the scenes that necessarily they shouldn't be out there with the media. And so you have to find people that are qualified to get the message out. And you also need to have people with a good business acumen so you can get all of these things working synergistically. And I think in our field, we don't have a lot of that. And maybe that's why there's a problem getting the information out.
Yeah, definitely, and I think that's one of the barriers. There's also larger barriers too in terms of how things are played up and covered in the media. And being somebody who worked in the media, I kind of understand how it works. So if you want after break, I could if you have that plan, I could kind of explain further. But a lot of the media is dictated by what people want and what people are into. So if more people are into this stuff, we will get more coverage.
Wow. You just gave me an idea. We'll have to talk about that.
Interesting.
And I know I like it. And the role of media when we get back. But I think I might have to seriously get one of your shirts. I'm digging it.
Aw, thank you.
I know, I love it. I'm Erica Lukes, and I'm here with Mike Damante, and I want you to make sure you visit punkrockandufos.com. And I think I'm gonna get your book too, and I'll be really excited when your second book comes out. So you have a new fan. This is very cool.
Well, thank you. The feeling is mutual. So I'm going to try to listen to you guys often as well.
Well, thank you. I am Erica Lukes, and I hope you are all having a fine Friday night. Make sure you stick around for our last segment, and then tune into KCOR the rest of the evening with our fabulous lineup of ladies who know how to rock it out. We will catch you on the last break after we get back.
Stand by.
This is UFO Classified with Erica Lukes.
Erica Lukes.
The phone lines are open now at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio. More UFO Classified.
UFO Classified
with Erica Lukes on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. After this.
You're listening to
UFO Classified with Erica Lukes, where the truth isn't hidden beneath the black lines of a Sharpie.
That's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
To be on with Erica, call 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio.
Radio contact.
Share your thoughts on the show on Twitter by using hashtag KCOR. Or head over to the live chats at KCORradio.com.
The audience goes nuts.
And now, your host of UFO Classified.
Are you ready?
Erica Lukes.
Erica Lukes.
Well, welcome back, everyone. I'm Erica Lukes. Happy to spend Friday night with you. I do have a confession to make, though. I am hanging with my friends in Cedar City, Utah, at the Utah UFO Festival. And this is a pre-record, but I am grateful that Mike Damante could be here with me to do this it's Wednesday afternoon. So, Mike, thank you so much for taking the time and doing that. And I am really stoked to get to know you, and I hope we get to meet soon. But I love punk rock and UFOs, and your blogs are fantastic. And thank you. And your book, I'm going to get your book and wear your T-shirt, and then I'll send you a little picture of me and my T-shirt. I know that will be the highlight of your life.
It will, for sure. Thank you. And I'll definitely someday come out to Utah or Vegas for some convention. It's definitely something I want to do sometime soon.
Well, yeah, definitely. We should maybe next year think about bringing you out to the Utah UFO Festival, because it would be really cool. And I know that the person who's putting it on, Nathan, he loves to get fresh new people and things, and you really have not been out in the world of the UFO tour or conference, have you?
I really haven't. That would be amazing. So count me in already.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'll plan on it. And, yeah, I like it. I like it. So we were talking when we left off. We were talking a little bit about the role of media and the UFO topic. But you've seen this, behind the scenes. So tell us what you've witnessed.
Well, the people usually when they think media, they think broadcast, right? That's usually the first thing, the nightly news, right? But it goes beyond that. It goes into print and web, and people need to understand that all media is money driven. Those monies come from advertisers, and the advertiser are able to charge based on ratings and clicks. So, for example, if a story, so when I used to work at the Houston Chronicle as a web producer, I would have to monitor web traffic. If a story wasn't doing well, we take it out, move into a different spot, try to change up the photos, and so on. because the more clicks a story gets, the more you can charge for advertisers. So UFO stories generally are pretty popular, I think, in terms of people always kind of want to hear about them, but it's where they're placed. You know, you see them in the newspaper above the fold, which means, you know, when you fold the paper, is it above or below, right? Do you see it on the front page? Do you see it buried in, you know, in the back? On the nightly news, do you see it as the lead story, or do you see it only getting 5 minutes of coverage? Same thing if you see it on the web. You know, where's it played up on the website? But a lot of times with these stories, you know, people think they're cool, but you don't see a follow-up. And I think that's the big thing. There's usually no follow-up story to these sightings and to these things.
But do you think, though, because I noticed when I was working against some things politically here, that they're typically, I mean, the media, especially on the news, I mean, they don't do follow-ups. And that shocked me.
Yes, especially with this stuff, you know, with the subject matter, there's usually no follow-ups, just because I think to them it's just kind of a one-off kind of, you know, kooky story. You know, Huffington Post actually has a whole Twitter account and a whole separate section called Weird News. And all that stuff is pretty much filed into weird news, where in reality it should just be news, you know?
Right. And that's a great point. I mean, that it should be news, and how are we going to get it so we're not kind of we're not put in this corner, put in this basket of weirdness?
Yeah, I just think more people need to be involved, keep clicking on those stories, and yeah, I think the more public interest grows, I think the more mainstream media coverage will grow in that sense.
So, you know, when you look at a site like Third Phase of the Moon, you know, I mean, everyone's at least favorite because of some of the quality of the hoaxes they've perpetrated. I mean, why do you think when you've got, I mean, they make, from what I understand, they actually do make a fair chunk of change putting this out there. So
and that's really disheartening to hear.
Yeah.
That people are profiting and advertisers are actually paying for misinformation.
Yes, they are. And that's unfortunate. But how do we, I mean, what can we do anything about that? And why do you think people find their stuff so glamorous?
Well, I think it comes to people being media literate, and a lot of people aren't media literate. You know, always check the sources, you know, the source of the story, where it came from. I think that's, you know, like I said, a lot of people are media literate to begin with. So some people will believe anything, and some people will believe everything. So I think that kind of all goes back to the part of us having to want to know where to look, what to look for. And I don't think enough people do that in general. You know, us as a society, we're pacified by pop culture. You know, we have so much distractions, like, you know, family, personal interest. We have so much things going on in our personal lives. It's hard to actually, you know, sometimes pick the time to actually actively seek out news in general. Not just about this subject, but just the news in general.
That's so interesting. Mm-hmm. And I do you have, because we're getting, you know, we've got just a few minutes left on the show, but what is your takeaway with this? What have you learned that has completely shocked you?
What do you mean, like in general?
You know, in general, I mean, was there something that, you know, pivotal moment when you started researching this and putting all of your effort into it, where you just thought, oh my gosh, everything has just completely shifted?
Well, when I first started writing my book, I just jumped right in. It was a summer. It was my first summer off as a teacher, or first or second. And I found myself, before I started writing the book, spending way too much money going out every night. And I was like, I need to do something where I'm not spending money. And I always wanted to write the book. It just came a matter of when. And I just started one day, and I made a routine, because I'm a very routine-driven person, where I would get up in the morning, I'd write, I'd go work out, come home, write some more, do some research, eat dinner, write, go to bed. And I kind of pretty much did that for about 2 weeks straight until the book was done. And I was just fully immersed in the subject, rediscovering stories that I read about as a kid, learning new things. I mean, I was basically like a sponge. I was just trying to catch up in some of the stuff I may have missed, whether it was, you know, from other stories or other books or reportings and sightings and other things, you know, incidents through histories, theories, you name it. I was just fully immersed in it. And I mean, even to this day, you never stop learning, and I'm constantly discovering books that I probably should have read a long time ago that I'm trying to catch up on and read now, and just try to expand my collection and knowledge.
Is your family supportive of this?
Yeah, surprisingly, yeah. They think it's cool. My mom actually knows some people who claim to be abducted and were friends with Daryl Sims. And she actually CC'd me on an email, so I have his email, so I was going to reach out to him and speak to him just to kind of get his perspective. But yeah, family and friends are really supportive. Sometimes when I try to bring up the more out there theories, they sometimes scoff and laugh, but I always try to make them aware that this stuff's out there. And a lot of times people are fascinated when they hear about this stuff. So there is an interest, especially through young people. Every time my students hear that I have a book about UFOs, all they want to do is read the book. So I think, especially with the young people, there's definitely a fascination for sure, and definitely a belief that they exist. I always try to bring up with my friends a lot more of the ancient alien type of theories, Sitchin's studies, just because they're so fascinating to me. Believing that everything started with the Sumerians, and ever since then, it's just fascinating that every civilization, every story has similarities to it. Everyone has seen similar things. The stories are similar. It's just fascinating to me that all these cultures that are not connected has all these connections and all these common interests just throughout centuries. So that to me was one of the main things that always fascinated me. That until to this day, I'm like a sponge. I want to learn more about the Sumerians. I want to learn more about all these ancient civilizations like the Egyptians, the Greek. I mean, these are all stuff I loved as a kid, but I haven't read about this stuff in years. So rereading again and rediscovering it is just kind of like an album, right? You haven't listened to it in a long time, and you put it on again and you rediscover those songs that you grew up on, and it's just kind of an epiphany. Just kind of something goes off, and it's great. It's a great feeling. It's not just nostalgia, but it's that re-education.
Absolutely. And that the second you say that, I'm thinking I have this really cool old 65 Galaxy convertible, and I was driving it the other day when it starts, and Pink Floyd came on, and I used to be a huge Pink Floyd fan back in the day because we go see the laser light shows, just totally dorky, but I was driving along listening to the lyrics of the song and thinking, oh my God, I never even paid attention to this, and this is like really powerful, meaningful stuff. So I know what you mean, just rediscovering work or looking at things now that you have a little knowledge behind you, and then kind of reframing everything. I mean, looking at history, and it's just all such a trip. And it's all, to me, I believe it's interconnected, and we have to look at the commonalities and dig back deeper. It's just cool.
Yeah, I think that the history of our civilization and all the secrets of the universe, they're there. It's just going to take, once again, it's going to take a mainstream populace to actually want to dig deep. And if it's rewriting our history books, if it's rewriting our religions, so be it. It's okay to be wrong. I don't understand why, some people think that's such a big threat, or if the government knows stuff, they're keeping it from us. I mean, newsflash, we know government keeps stuff from us all the time. There's classified documents for a reason, right? We understand that they keep stuff from us. So if they were to come through with UFO disclosure, I don't think people are going to be riding on the streets over Roswell. I don't see that happening. Just because we know that there's stuff been withheld from you. So the idea that some of the stuff may smash our generalizations and our common belief systems is going to destroy our society as we know it. I don't buy that.
Oh boy, and that's one of those things. It's like a day I will spend kind of focusing on a certain aspect of research, and I feel like we should not be divulging information. If there's information out there, it could be so pivotal and damaging that it shouldn't be disclosed. And then other days I'm like, oh, whatever. So I go back and forth on it because truly, I really don't know what all is there, and I don't know if we could handle it.
And I think part of it, earlier I mentioned Paul Hellyer, the Canadian defensive. He came out and said stuff, and he straight up admitted that UFOs are real. Alien civilizations have been visiting us for centuries. So there's constantly people in high-ranking positions who, on record, said these things, and no one has stopped them after the fact. So I don't think our world governments care that much that this stuff gets out there in this sense, because honestly, some of these books that are out, like I'm reading like The Day After Roswell by Colonel Philip J. Corso, who's retired, who actually worked through the Pentagon during Roswell, and he's physically firsthand seen the technology and how it was applied. And if they didn't want the stuff to get out there, this book wouldn't be out. It's simple as that. So, I think it's a slow dissemination into our culture about this stuff. But once again, you need a large audience for this. If you write a book about this stuff and 300 people read it, that's not enough, right? I think there needs to be a larger interest, a mainstream interest for this stuff to fully catch on.
So what are we going to do? How are we going to accomplish that?
I don't know. That's a really good question. I don't have that answer. I just think.
Oh, come on. I know I put you on the spot, but
I think it goes beyond this. I think in general, more people need to be interested in stuff that affects them outside of, our family life, our work, our job, pop culture, and our interest. I think people need to dig deeper into everything in general, question everything. What's a mantra as a journalist you use, but you could, use it in life, apply it to life as well. But I just think in general, we need to do more. We need to be actively educating and informing people about this stuff, because I think at the end of the day, the secrets to our universe and our beginnings, they're out there, and you can draw so many, dots and connections. And, what it's going to take is going to take something big, really big, Like I said, like UFOs landing on the lawn of the White House. It's going to take something that big, or all the world governments coming out at once and admitting the truth. That's what it's going to take. I think it needs to be something big and drastic like that to wake people up.
And even then, like you mentioned at the beginning of the show, it's like, would that even do it? Because, you talk about UFOs in Washington. My gosh, you've got back in the 50s, they were flying over the White House. Yeah. Come on, or the Phoenix Lights.
Yeah,
where thousands of people saw it, including the governor. And, it's like, at what point do we care more about all of this and our world and our safety? And at what point do we not look straight forward anymore?
Yeah, no, you're right. Like I said, it may take something drastic, but you're right. Some of these things, like the Phoenix Lights was a great example. Something that's witnessed by thousands of people years after the fact, where it was admitted to be a UFO, by the local government after, they spent, weeks and months trying to downplay it and poke fun at it. People have admitted that, these things are real. So it's frustrating in that sense, where you still have people that are skeptical and who don't believe, or, these stories aren't as big as they should be and they deserve to be.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. And I think for me, living in Utah and living 80 miles away from a very large weapons, chemical and biological weapons testing facility, to me, I care if there's something unusual flying in the area, because that could affect, really the whole planet.
And it's in your backyard, which I'm very jealous of, that you live so close. If I ever come visit, I want to go there.
Well, I have never heard that reason for people being jealous. I live in Salt Lake. That's a new one. But I'll take you there. I've got a friend who was just out there last weekend on the periphery, and it's an interesting place. And we'll definitely drive up by Skinwalker Ranch and Uinta Basin, because that place is just, my Lord. But there are places like that all over the world.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of getting out there and doing a little research, looking at old newspaper clippings and putting the puzzle pieces together, and you can do your own research and find a place just as unusual as Skinwalker or Dugway.
Yeah, for sure. And just like I said, having it in your backyard is really cool. So I'm jealous.
Oh, come out. You can visit me anytime. And I want to just say, because I didn't mention this earlier, since you live in Texas, and Texas is an incredibly unusual place with the different types of sightings and areas that you have. But have you ever been to Marfa?
Ooh, I knew that was coming. No, but I do want to go one day. Just because, I mean, people understand how large Texas is. Basically, if you're driving to get out of Texas, it takes like 12 hours just to get out, especially from where I am in Houston. You were kind of south. But Texas is large. I mean, outside of Houston, the next big city is Austin, which is 2.5 hours, which isn't too far. Dallas is about 4.5 hours. So Texas is large. I think Marfa is about 5 to 6 hours away. So I don't get to go to those places as often as I like to. But no, it's definitely a place I want to check out. I've had friends who've been there, and it's a very interesting phenomenon from what I've heard. And it's definitely something I'd love to experience one day. It is driving distance. It's just a long drive.
Well, come on now. You got to put it on your list and get out there, because I need to live vicariously through you. That's a place I've always wanted to go because it's so unusual. And there's a really great researcher, James Bunell, who has done significant research. And I've been trying to figure out a way to get a hold of him because his research has been very meticulous, very scientific. And he's cool. So if you find a line on him, let me know.
Awesome, will do.
You are the best. So so you've got your new book coming out. Then what else are you going to be doing? Are you going to be speaking anywhere? When's your next blog coming out? Give us the 411.
Well, okay, so I'm currently working on the next book, which I haven't found a home for yet. That's what I'm currently working on. I want to go a different route than last time. I have a few other books that have been written that I just need to put the finishing touches on. One of them is a book about Bigfoot, which is fiction. I have another short story book. It's a fiction book it's a horror book. Then I have a book I've written about the pop punk emo explosion of the 90s, 2000s, which is kind of coming back, that I really need to kind of find homes for. But the priority is Punk Rock and UFOs follow-up that I started on this summer. The website Punk Rock and UFOs, I have a few things coming up. I recently learned that Charlemagne the God is into paranormal, which I did not know. And Mike Huberty, who does a really cool podcast that I've been on, he's interviewing him for his podcast. So I think that's something I want to look into too, is possibly trying to speak to Charlemagne the God, just because he's such a really cool guy, and I didn't know he was into the paranormal stuff. So that's something.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that's something I'm going to look at doing next. But yeah, the goal is to try to find a home for Punk Rock and UFOs 2, which is tentatively titled True Believers, which is kind of the name of a Bouncing Soul song. So it kind of goes to the whole punk rock theme as well.
I like it.
But yeah, so that's what I'm currently going to try to do this summer, is just kind of work really hard on finding homes for these projects.
Cool.
Then,
well,
as
keep
far as
us posted.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I really don't have anything. I mean, I have a few. I want to be on Somewhere in the Skies, which is a Ryan Sprague show. We taped it last week. I think it's going to run the next 2 weeks. So I think that's the next appearance outside of this as well. But yeah, I just want to try to work on getting the book out and getting my name out there more, and having great opportunities like this, which I'm really appreciative of, and just doing more like cryptozoology and culture. That's what I'm trying to do with the website Punk Rock and UFOs. I want to try to learn more about the researchers themselves, what they're into, and get their perspectives as well. So that's what I'm trying to accomplish with that site, is to try to, it's funny, I kind of said to somebody, it's like, I want to blend cryptozoology and culture, like kind of like Maxim, but not in a sense where it's like degrading the women, if that makes any sense, So, for example, like one of the stories I want to do, I haven't done yet, I have a friend of mine who's on the show Face Off, and she did a really badass Sasquatch bake-off. So just to kind of get her perspective on how she did it. So in addition to doing hard news types of stories, I kind of want to do feature-y things as well, and kind of blend cryptozoology and culture together. And the book itself, thank you. The book itself is obviously more serious, but the website, that's kind of the aim and the goal for the website.
Oh, that's so cool. And I'm just sitting here thinking I've got a brilliant cryptozoologist who I need to put you in touch with.
Nice.
He's done significant work. Yeah, he's amazing. Bruce Champagne. So I'll send you his details, and we are getting ready to wrap it up. Thank you for being here, and I will keep my listeners informed about when the book comes out. We'll have you back, and then where you'll be and what's happening. And I just think it's fun to meet you and to have you on the show. Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you for letting me interview you too, for the website. And I'm looking forward, hopefully, UFOs Lost Evidence gets picked up for a second season, so we can see more of you on that as well, too. And thank you. It's good to make another friend. So thank you.
I know, I love it. Yeah, thank you. It's awesome to have supportive and positive people in the field. We need more of that. All of my listeners, I want to thank you for listening from all over the world. Every day the show gets larger and larger, and I think it's neat to see that I have an audience that is built on respect, and we care about standards and behavior, and we are really, truly, all of us, going to move this subject forward so it will get the research it deserves. I am Erica Lukes. Make sure you go to my Facebook to check out my pictures from this weekend. You all be safe and stick around for a fabulous night on KCOR. We'll see you next week.
Listen very carefully.
This is Houston. Say again, please.
Houston, we've had a problem.
This is UFO Classified, live every Friday night, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The truth is out there, just waiting to be discovered.
And now, if you will, accompany me on a journey to the future.
For more information on the host of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes, upcoming guests, as well as links to the past shows,
visit her website at ufoclassified.com.
UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a shack just south of